the myth of the eternal return, Mircea Eliade writes about rites and beliefs from disparate traditions, for example, Egyptian, Hebrew, Iranian, Babylonian, North American Indian, etc., concerning the regeneration of time. I came upon his very interesting chapter, New Year Cosmogony, and as I read about the rituals and beliefs around so-called New Year festivals from different traditions, it struck me that there were, in fact, some similarities with the myths of Newgrange, and that this was a subject worthy of further discussion. I was particularly interested in the New Year ceremonies and an associated cult of the dead, and the widespread belief in the idea that the deceased come back to their families at the time of a New Year season, which is generally placed during the 12 days between Christmas and Epiphany, or at the time of winter solstice. Eliade writes, "At this point, let us note that the beliefs held almost everywhere, according to which the dead return to their families, and often return as living dead, at the New Year season during the 12 days between Christmas and Epiphany, signify the hope that the abolition of time is possible at this mythical moment, in which the world is destroyed and recreated. The dead can come back now, for all barriers between the dead and the living are broken. Is not primordial chaos reactualized? And they will come back because at this paradoxical instant time will be suspended, hence they can again be contemporaries of the living." The tradition in Ireland, of course, is that the spirits of the dead can re-emerge into this mortal world at Samhain, which is an old cross-quarter calendar date marking the beginning of winter, and which is situated in the calendar approximately 6 weeks before winter solstice. Notwithstanding this tradition associated with Samhain, I wondered whether the New Year beliefs, i.e. ritual practices associated with winter solstice, might have been incorporated into rituals at Broga, Newgrange, by its original builders. There is no way, of course, to determine this, but a perfunctory exploration of the subject suggests interesting possibilities. Eliade, whose book was published in 1954, says that in many cultures there was an attempt with these New Year ceremonies at regeneration, which implies a new birth. The annual expulsion of sins, diseases and demons is, he suggests, an attempt to restore mythical and primordial time, in other words, the time of the instant of creation. Every new year is a resumption of time from the beginning, i.e., a repetition of the cosmogony. Fascinatingly, one component of the cosmogony is the victory of a divinity over a marine monster who, Eliade says, is the incarnation of chaos. For instance, in the Babylonian creation myth, the god Marduk defeats the sea monster or she-dragon Tiamat and cuts her into two, making the sky from one half and the earth from the other. In the Old Testament, Yahweh is victorious over the sea monster Rahab, a symbol of chaos. And these are Eliade's words. The slaying of the monster Rahab and the victory over the waters, signifying the organisation of the world, were equivalent to the creation of the cosmos and at the same time to the salvation of man, victory over death, guarantee of food for the coming year, and so on. Fascinatingly, at Newgrange, the chief deity Dagda is credited with the destruction of a 100-legged, 4-headed monster called the Mata. Dagda is often described as a solar deity, and he, quote, performed miracles and saw to the weather and the harvest, unquote. Mata was a huge beast who licked up the Boyne River until it became a dry river valley. There are separate and distinct renditions of the story in the Dinshanicus. In one, the beast Mata swims in a great sea covering the land where the monuments are located. The sea is called Muirhevne, meaning the land covered by the sea, or something similar. Dagda defeated the Mata with his club of anger, causing the sea to recede. In another rendition, the men of Ireland break the limbs of the beast at a mysterious stone upon Newgrange, Sheed in Broga, called Lech Ben. They dismember the monster and throw its limbs into the Boyne, several of its parts later forming landscape features. Eliade says that the victory over the waters signifies the establishment of stable forms, i.e. the creation. Mata's shin bone forms the Boyne estuary, and its breast or rib cage forms the ford of Auchlia, Dublin. Eliade further states that traces of the ancient scenario of the combat and victory of the divinity over the marine monster can be discerned in the Jewish ceremonial of the New Year. I wonder whether the myth about Dagda's defeat of the monster might at one time have been significant to the celebration of the turning of the year at Newgrange, where, on the shortest days of the year, the monument's stone chamber receives a beam of light from the rising winter solstice sun, shining through a narrow aperture and piercing a 19-metre-long stone corridor. In many traditions, there were 12 intermediate days between the old year and the new. During the 12 corresponding nights, the dead come in procession to visit their families. At Newgrange, the builders brought the cremated bones of their dead into the chamber and placed them there, perhaps in the hope that they would be restored to life beyond this mortal plane, in some other world glimpsed occasionally by the druids or shamans. Eliade says that this is also the time of initiations, one of whose essential elements is the extinction and rekindling of fire. In particular, there is the lighting of the new fire, which is an important part of such ceremonies. Did the builders of Newgrange see the piercing of the monument by the warm glow of the midwinter sun as a moment when the old fire died and the new fire was kindled? This is certainly hinted at in myth, where we read in the Gawal in Shida, the taking of the Otherworld mounds, that Dagda's son, Aengus Og, tricks his father out of ownership of the brew, the young newborn son replacing the old dying son, perhaps. The structure of the New Year ceremonies, says Eliade, supposes a death and a resurrection, a new birth, a new man. Aengus was conceived at Newgrange when Dagda entered the monument while the sun was made to stand still in the sky, i.e. solstice, when the sun's rising position does not change for several days, to mate with the female goddess Boin. It would be impossible to find, says Eliade, a more appropriate frame for the initiation rituals than the 12 nights when the past year vanishes to give place to another year, another era. That is, to the period when, through the reactualization of the creation, the world in effect begins. After further thought, it became apparent to me that a version of Aengus's taking of Newgrange in Tuchmark Etain, the wooing of Etain, might possess elements of an initiation rite. Aengus is told by his father, Dagda, to go to Sheed Broga at Samhain and to threaten Elkmar, who is the owner of Newgrange in this thread of myth. The youngster successfully banishes Elkmar from the monument and becomes its new owner. Presumably, in order to do so, the youngster has to enter the darkness of the cave where the bones of the ancestors are scattered about, and to perhaps stay there to endure not only the darkness, but whatever visions might manifest while he is removed from the sense world. Was Aengus initiated? This is a subject to which I will return.